Hello. Imagine receiving notice that your job is ending. You begin to calculate your mortgage, groceries, utilities. But then another question arrives, quieter yet more unsettling. What happens to your family's health insurance? This is policymaker. So how did the United States end up permanently hitching health insurance to employment? Why does the system impose catastrophic consequences on workers at precisely the moment they lose their jobs? And what does this reveal about American institutions' failure to protect human dignity in moments of crisis? The origins trace back to World War II. With labor scarce and demand for goods surging, Congress passed the Stabilization Act of 1942, granting President Franklin D. Roosevelt the authority to freeze wages across the American economy. On September 25, 1943, FDR issued Executive Order 9381, directing the National War Labor Board to stabilize salaries and wages paid by any U.S. employer. But the wage freeze contained a deliberate exemption. Insurance and pension benefits could increase in, quote, a reasonable amount without violating the controls. Employers, unable to attract workers with higher salaries, began offering health insurance as a fringe benefit. It was a workaround, not a policy vision. Also in 1943, the Internal Revenue Service, better known by its acronym the IRS, ruled that employer contributions to health insurance would not count as taxable income for employees. So suddenly, health insurance became extraordinarily attractive. Workers received a valuable benefit without paying taxes on it. And employers could deduct the cost as a business expense. The numbers tell a story of explosive growth. According to research published by the National Bureau of Economic Research, in 1940, just 21 million Americans had employer-sponsored health insurance. By 1950, that figure had reached 142 million. The system solidified further in 1954 when Congress formally enacted Section 106 of the Internal Revenue Code. This permanently exempted employer-sponsored health insurance from federal income and payroll taxes. By 1974, Congress passed the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, known as ERISA, which standardized rules for employer-sponsored benefit plans and prevented states from creating a patchwork of conflicting regulations. What began as a wartime accident had become the backbone of American healthcare. And now here is the central dysfunction. In the United States, health insurance and employment are structurally fused. For most working-age Americans, losing a job means losing health coverage. And not with an amicable grace period either. It can be immediately or within days. And this happens at the precise moment when a household faces maximum financial precarity. According to data from the US Census Bureau, analyzed during the COVID-19 pandemic, the uninsurance rate among unemployed persons who had lost or left a job was 26.3%, compared to just 10.7% among those still employed. The Economic Policy Institute estimated that 9.2 million workers lost their employer-provided health insurance in just 4 weeks during March and April 2020. A separate study by the Employee Benefit Research Institute found that as many as 7.7 million workers lost jobs with employer-sponsored insurance during the pandemic, affecting an additional 6.9 million dependents, totaling 14.6 million people. And so the pattern is clear. Job loss does not just strip away income, it simultaneously strips away the safety net meant to protect families from medical catastrophe. Now, federal law does technically provide an option. The Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act, COBRA, allows workers who lose their jobs to continue their employer-sponsored health coverage for up to 18 months. But there's a catch here that renders it inaccessible for most: the cost. Under COBRA, the newly unemployed individual must pay the full premium, both the portion previously paid by the employee and the portion paid by the employer, plus an additional 2% administrative fee. This can actually total 102% of the plan's full cost, as corroborated by the U.S. Department of Labor. For most people, this is prohibitively expensive, especially following job loss. The average total annual cost of employer-sponsored health coverage in 2019 was $7,012 for single coverage and $20,599 for family coverage. Monthly premiums under COBRA commonly range from $400 to $700 per person. For a family already destabilized by unemployment, COBRA is not a solution. It's an expensive illusion. Most cannot afford it. They are left uninsured precisely when they are most vulnerable. The consequences we see are measurable and severe. Medical expenses are now the leading cause of bankruptcy in the United States. Research published in the American Journal of Public Health found that 67% of all bankruptcies are directly caused by medical expenses, affecting approximately 530,000 families each year. The Harvard Law School professor Elizabeth Warren, nowadays a senator from Massachusetts, who studied bankruptcy filings extensively, found that families were often just one serious illness away from financial collapse. Even those with insurance face average out-of-pocket medical costs close to $18,000. The single most important predictor of medical bankruptcy was a gap in health insurance coverage, even a temporary one, for any family member. Job loss creates that gap. It forces families to choose between paying rent and paying for coverage, between groceries and prescriptions. When a medical emergency then occurs, a child's sudden illness, a parent's chronic condition, an accident requiring surgery, the family faces catastrophic costs with no coverage to absorb the blow. What makes all this uniquely American is not that people lose their jobs, economic downturns happen everywhere, but that job loss in America uniquely means losing healthcare. In Canada, the publicly funded Medicare system ensures that all citizens and permanent residents have access to medically necessary services, regardless of employment status. In the United Kingdom, the National Health Service provides free healthcare to all residents. Germany's system, a mix of public and private insurance funded through employer and employee contributions, does not disappear when employment ends. France's system covers the majority of medical expenses through a public framework, complemented by voluntary insurance. The point is not that these systems are without problems. Every system has inefficiencies and trade-offs. The point is that they do not permit the situation that occurs routinely in America, a worker losing income and health security simultaneously at the moment of maximum crisis. They recognize healthcare as a public good and a civic responsibility, not a privilege contingent upon employment. So we return to the question, what does it mean that the United States permits this vulnerability at precisely the moment when citizens most need reassurance? It means that American institutions have embedded insecurity into the very architecture of economic life. It means that the social contract includes a clause that most people would find unacceptable. If you lose your job, you lose protection from medical catastrophe when you are least able to afford it. This system was not designed. It emerged from a wartime freeze in 1943 and got codified by a tax ruling in 1954. It has persisted because dismantling it has always seemed too difficult, too disruptive, and too costly. But the cost is already being paid by the 9.2 million workers who lost coverage in a single month, by the 530,000 families who file for bankruptcy each year, by every household that must choose between health and financial survival. The question then is not whether this system is sustainable, it is whether a democratic society of such wealth and capacity can continue to tolerate it. This is Policymaker. Thank you.